So in case you're stumbling on this from one of my books or flyers that I've passed around town, you may have seen it. This flyer here is a 4-page write-up about AI that I did, printed out 25 copies and distributed them at coffee shops on December 29th. Got a few other copies to pass out. And there's also my book, which I had 12 copies of that I distributed. It tells you everything you need to know about this project. And I call it the Sourcebook. And the first places, well, of course, you can buy it on Amazon. There's a prominent link on KC What down below, in fact. And they're also available at Prospero's Books in Kansas City, 39th and Bell. And also at Turnsall Books at 19th and Broadway. So if you've seen this and you're stumbling on this page, I just wanted to give you a quick update on this project and give you an idea of what I've been up to, where I'm going, and what it's all about. First of all, just a quick, simple way to engage. I put up the What's Up blog. It asks very simply, Kansas City, what up? Take it wherever you want. Yesterday, I started taking pictures of the sky, as I sometimes do, and posted that on the What's Up blog. So if you have something you want to say, or a picture of the sky from Kansas City that you want to send in to help me make a compilation, or if you just want to engage with me in this project in some way, but you're not ready to sign up for the Good Meal Deal, you don't feel like using the Contact Us forms, just go ahead and pop over to the What's Up blog. It's in the menu there. If you're on your phone, go ahead and open up the menu and find the What's Up blog there, and you can engage with me there. And the second thing I'm working on between, doing low-wage jobs to try to pay the bills, the second thing I'm working on is the first live streams. As you know, this project, if you've read the book, this project has a component where we make meals live and deliver them. And I'm diligently preparing that first event. I'll be using a book to guide me in what I make. Every time when I do it, I'm going to make a soup, and I'm going to use this book here. This is 12 Months of Monastery Soups by Brother Victor Antoine de Avila La Tourette. And you see it's got this beautiful recipes on each page with these nice little woodcuts at the bottom. And so for the first month, we're just going to go right to the first soup here on the first month, and we're just going to make the first one, St. Basil Soup. And so that's what I'm going to make for the first live stream, and then just some simple other items, do whatever kind of delivery we can, just to convey the idea, and then try to get more people involved, try to get other restaurants involved, try to get people to help me deliver these and become a part of the project. So that's the game plan, and that's where I'm headed towards those first live streams. So stay tuned for that. And I also wanted to show you that we're ready to go here. I'm at a business incubator in Independence called the Innovation Center. Tell you more about that once I'm there, and we got some visuals of it. But it's in Independence, and here's my health permit for the Good Meal Deal. Food inspection passed with flying colors. And here's this, just to show you we're absolutely registered to do business in the state of Missouri, in Kansas, of course. So stay tuned, and I hope you become part of this project and check out my Good Meal Deal live streams. Okay, so that's the update. And now I'm going to do a reading from the book. The first part of the book is simply me telling my story about how I developed this idea and past 10 years of my life, and just to give you an idea of where I'm coming from. And it's a little boring, so if you're not interested in that, now would be a good time to click away. But I want to read the book simply because it tells everything about the project. I could just say every detail that I wanted to get down, every point I wanted to make. And then, as I introduce it to the world and things change, I can, let me see here. I'll have this book that we can constantly refer back to. So I'm going to go ahead and read it here. Here's this one. Let me pull up a image of it. Here's the book here. Here's the first page. There I am. Okay. So the first part of the book is just me telling my story. Not that interesting. I want to have the other details on the record, but I am just going to go ahead and read the first chapter that I wrote, which, like I said, is just me talking about myself and the history of the idea, just to give you the personal angle of this, because it is very anonymous and abstract. And I thought, well, do I really need to read word for word me telling, my story, how I got here? And I thought, well, it's part of the book, and I don't really know what part to do. Should I summarize it? So I go ahead and read it, and if you don't feel like watching it, no one's watching this anyway. So go ahead and put it down for the record. And the other reason I'm reading it is just very simply because, and the reason that I put my story at the top of this book is very simply, I believe that it is my purpose in life to inject this idea into the world. Simply said, that's it. And so I will do absolutely everything I can to make sure that it is not miscarried and that it enters the world in the way that it ought to, with its principles intact. So, okay, so here we go on the first chapter. Some of my other titles. The practical history and development of my model. In an important sense, this community building project model is entirely defined by and sourced from a set of objective principles, and in this way, de-emphasizes personal leadership and technical/marketing magic, which is usually what fuels startups. This community building project is definitely a startup, and it needs money to operate like all businesses. And yet, it is not a business. It does not have the same operational aims and infrastructural aspirations as a traditional business. But it needs money, requires money to operate. Therefore, if it is not a regular business, it must be a nonprofit using the grant process to obtain its funding. And yet, it is neither. This project is not a traditional business in its ownership and capital structure, and it is not a nonprofit organization either in its practices and how it's set up. It's a community building project. In order to explain the community building project, I will not begin with the principles, but rather ground the project in space and time by telling my personal story and about the practical work that led me to develop these principles. This will be a pleasant contrast to the anonymous and abstract nature of this project. I am a 40-year-old author and entrepreneur in the Kansas City area. I have been drawn toward the restaurant industry in an oblique way since my youth. After reading the novel A Confederacy of Dunces by John Kennedy Toole when I was 16, I was inspired to get a hot dog cart, like the book's main character, Ignatius J. Riley. I purchased an old one and fixed it up over the summer, vending at a festival in Sedalia, Missouri, and locally for a while. I lost interest somewhat quickly after that and sold the cart for a small profit, then finished high school. In 2013-2014, I developed Soup Kitchen 501, a restaurant concept which was eventually launched as a food truck. The launch occurred as I was in my final semester at UMKC, finishing my graduate classes and undergrad career there amidst some minor controversy. Over the course of creating and running Soup Kitchen 501, I ended up with a set of principles to operate and scale the concept as a restaurant. Turns out the business itself, let me just say hi to the audience here. My own way. There you go. There's no audience. Okay. Over the course of creating and running Soup Kitchen 501, I ended up with a set of principles to operate and scale the concept as a restaurant. Turns out the business itself was doomed early on, after I had to pay my first business partner to buy out her stake, and my second business partner was also my romantic partner. The relationship and the business had dissolved entirely by October 2014. I left Kansas City at the beginning of 2015, sold the Soup Kitchen 501 vehicle for a modest profit, and used the money to move to Dubuque, Iowa, an inexpensive, small to medium-sized Midwestern city, which I landed in largely because it was less than 100 miles from where I delivered the Soup Kitchen food truck to the buyer, and its hills and architecture and Monk's coffee shop gave the place a memorable beauty. In Dubuque, I spent the first 6 months of 2015 typing up my notebooks from 2011 through 2013 and organizing my papers and documents from before 2011. I took my favorite bits from the earliest material and used the stories as the basis of a novel I began writing in July. By February 2016, I had finished writing this new synthesized material, which makes up the bulk of the novel, and then spent about 3 years editing and sequencing and reflecting on the sections. I began publishing rather amateurish novella editions of this material in 2019. Over time, the quality of my book formatting and covers improved. And today, I have a number of more handsome titles available through my publishing company, MW Publications. Go back to that page. 2 books of poetry, a book of spiritual essays, the novel, and a long book of metaphysical explorations known as Prelim Notes. In spring 2016, I returned to Kansas City and began working for my family's retail business. Eventually, I built up a successful clothing pop-up with products from my family's store, while also prototyping designs for kilts and skirts to sell, traveling around the country, vending at the bigger Celtic festivals. During this time, when I was setting up a tent every weekend for 8 months of the year, I began experimenting with building materials and creating designs for a tent. Throughout 2018 in 2019, I continued developing these concepts for a tent framework that I called a form of mobile structure. As the designs took shape, I began theorizing about the structure of building projects. We are caught up. By the end of 2019, I had made a 4-foot steel cube that opened into the platform base for a full tent with a fabric roof, engineering this very heavy and very experimental design with a professional welder. I think of it as some kind of cosmic spore, and I call it a zune. It's not in the book, but there's actually in a zune, the only one in the world, I believe, there's actually in a zune in the West Bottoms, where I had an office and I don't even know where to put it. It's very heavy and large. And so if you want to see the Azun, it is in the West Bottoms. I won't tell you exactly where, but if you want to go on a hunt for it, I'm going to go on a Easter egg hunt, or no, a scavenger hunt for it. It is there anyway. I'll take some pictures of it and put it up here. So that's a Zune. By the summer of 2020, I was broke and bereft, and I had to close my workshop/office housing the cube, my building project plans, and the clothing business equipment, because pandemic. I had leveraged all my resources, expecting and ready to go straight into another 8-month festival season. Then I had no income and couldn't use the prototype tent I had made. I shut shit down and retreated to my home like everybody else. During the pandemic, I began using emerging no-code tools such as Bubble and Adalo to make an app. The app I was attempting to make was the Good Meal Deal, a group of 10 local restaurants banding together and offering meals for delivery under a subscription model. There we are. I had no way to actually launch this Good Meal Deal, and the apps I was trying to make didn't turn out very good. I had abandoned the app building by the end of 2021, returning to my notebook's transcription of 2011 through 2013 to see what I could do with it. At some point in here, I did a number of podcast episodes of the Anarcho-Spiritual Broadcast, which is located on anarchospiritualism.com. My blog begun in 2017. During 2022, I worked as a pizza shop manager full-time, enough to save a small amount of money and get by. And my earliest writings began to come together as a book entitled Preliminary Notes of a Profit Delusion, Theory and Practice. I sold my first copy. Oh, I actually have that book here. Here's that one. It's rather long. It's about, right now it runs close to 700 pages. I'm almost done with it. It currently has around 730 sections, and it actually has 888 sections, so close to being done. Let's go ahead and finish this up. We're almost done here. Last page. And this was very uplifting. Selling this book, I've sold maybe a dozen copies there. It's this idea that someone was there to buy coffee and they ended up plunking down $18 for my book was very uplifting. In 2023, I made some money from my clothing business work in the past and tried to start up a video business. I had added pieces of the puzzle with a live streaming angle, and yet my approach to the project was fatally flawed. And so that's the first chapter. Then it goes into actually about the project. And just to give you an idea of more of what the book is like, let's go ahead and read the next just half page. But let me just say from earlier why I'm reading this. I had some audio issues at the beginning of this. I'm not sure if I made it clear, but I'm reading this straight through, and I'm going to read other books on here too in the future, but I'm reading this straight through simply because I don't know how to summarize it. And if I could simply tell somebody why I think it's important in 2 minutes, I would do that, but I feel like I can't, and so I want to get it right, and so I wrote this book to make sure that I got the words exactly right. And saying this again to say what I said at the beginning, which is that I believe it is my purpose to inject this idea into the world. And so that's why I'm struggling so mightily to get this started just myself. Okay, so the next page, I'll just read this real quick and then wrap this up and get back to reading it later. The rest of it, page by page. Okay, here we go. 1, there is a missing social system between the level of the family or romantic unit and the level of political institutions. This I call a community building project. 2, a community building project starts with a minimum of 100 people. 3, the concepts and principles of this community building project developed from my theoretical principles about building projects, building mobile structure. I extended and subtilized these principles so that instead of guiding the creation of physical objects, we are building communal wealth. The entity that holds this communal wealth in the way a building contains space is the community building project. 4, the central principle of a community building project is that of essential equality. Okay, well, I'm going to wrap that up here. I'm getting on 30 minutes now, but I've given you a project update up top, and then I've started to read my book, the first chapter of which is me telling my story along with the development of this project. And then we also read the second chapter, which is 4 simple overarching points of the main, biggest, broadest points about what a community building project is. So thank you for watching, and thank you for listening, and I hope to see you on here again.